Why do we feel instantly there's a violation involved if you were to see a human person on a leash? But there's no such violation if you see a dog on a leash. It's a sign that that person holding the leash is asserting his will over another person. And what distinguishes a person from an animal is that we have our own will.
Eustace asks, where is the line for the sin of lust? I used to struggle with pornography and masturbation addictions, but overcame those by the grace of God and the rosary. What I struggle with now is the almost lizard brain desire to gape at attractive women. It's been quite a while since I've done so and allowed lustful thoughts. When it happens, the lustful thoughts definitely present themselves as temptations. So I know I need to move past this. But how does one overcome that desire to look at the beauty of a woman? That beauty is inherently good, but that uncontrollable urge for beauty cannot be satisfied by an attractive woman and can only be satisfied by God. How does one get to the point of finding satisfaction in the beauty of God?
What a well-articulated question, which just gives us a beautiful window into his journey.
Yeah, stages of the journey.
Stages of the journey.
Yeah.
Eustace, I'll say this to you. You're not meant to overcome or conquer your attraction to beauty, but to allow your attraction to beauty to be purified. We should rather want to overcome the desire to look at beauty in a lustful, demeaning way, where we grasp at that beauty and seek to take possession of it, even if only in our thoughts, right? Taking possession of it so that I can feed off it in a way that I'm actually treating another person as something less than a person. And what do we mean by person, right? A person, John Paul II says, is the kind of good that does not admit of being used. Right? That's the negative side is thou shalt not use. The positive side is thou shalt love. So the opposite of love here is not so much hatred. The opposite of love is treating another person as a means to an end. Right? Why do we feel instantly there's a violation involved if you were to see a human person on a leash? But there's no such violation if you see a dog on a leash. There's an immediate felt violation of one person having another person on a leash because it's a sign that that person holding the leash is asserting his will over another person. And what distinguishes a person from an animal is that we have our own will. Human persons have a will, and that will is a line that we cannot cross. And we feel it. We feel a violation of our humanity when someone tries to will for me. I remember some movie, I can't remember what movie it was, and I wish I could because I've wanted to look up the scene and use it in a course. So if anybody out there knows this movie scene, you can let us know. But it was this woman and a guy out on a date, or maybe they had known each other for some time, and maybe they were even married, I don't know. And the man looked at the menu, and the waitress or waiter was there, and the waiter went to motion to the woman, "What would you like?" And the man just jumped in and ordered for her, not in a loving way with a tenderness where he knows what his wife or girlfriend really loves and wants to, love and honor her there and just do the ordering for her out of love. But it was clearly an indication. This was what was intended in the movie of this woman's being violated, her will's being violated, because this guy's jumping in and inserting, "No, I'll order for her. I know what she wants." Da, 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 da. But it was, he didn't know what she wanted, and he didn't even care what she wanted.
Yeah, and
he was just mowing her over.
You can tell it in the scene. I bet she looks.
Yes, exactly.
That way. Yeah.
She looked violated.
Yeah,
and she's like, "I'm done with this guy. I don't want to be with this guy anymore." And rightly, when those violations happen, we rightly feel violated.
Yeah.
So lust is that kind of violation. Here's maybe a little test of what's going on in your mind and your heart. Would you want the other person to know the nature of your thoughts about that other person? John Paul II says that love is transparent. It's not concerned if the other person were to know my thoughts, because the other person would be delighted to know that I'm loving that person. But if I'm in there entertaining thoughts that this other is a sexual object for my gratification, and that person knew it, if that person is in touch with his or her dignity, that person will know, I don't want to be thought of that way by this other person. How can we know when we've crossed the line? John Paul II says this is a science that cannot be learned only from books. Although we can read and learn, and abstract knowledge of these things is important too, John Paul II says, but nonetheless, he says, it's a science of the heart. We have to become students of our hearts. He says, deep in the heart, we learn to discern the movements of our hearts. We learn to discern the difference between a movement of my heart that is geared only towards using others, and another movement of my heart that he says is aimed at appreciating the great riches of human sexuality and the beauty of the body according to God's original plan, right? And he says, although these movements of the heart can be mistaken for one another within a certain degree, many times, it's very clear this is not a motive of a deep appreciation of the original beauty and splendor of God's plan, but it's a usurial attitude where I'm wanting to take, I'm wanting to feed in a way that treats that person as less than a person. But John Paul goes on, he says, nonetheless, we have been called by Christ to acquire a mature and deep evaluation of the different motives of our hearts. And then he says, this task can be carried out, and it is truly worthy of the human person, truly worthy of man to carry out that task. Now, I have been a man who has been taking this task very seriously since I first came to a real faith in the Lord in 1990. Like, that's when I first really diligently said, I want to make this journey of distinguishing the movements of my heart. And it's a long journey. And I have been surprised at many turns to recognize how deep the disorder goes in my heart. So you'll remember this, Wendy. I was 5 years into the journey. You and I were dating. 5 years into that journey of really taking this seriously, discerning those movements of the heart. And I was feeling so liberated in my love for you that I didn't want to dominate you in a controlling way. I didn't want to use you. I didn't want to just push your buttons to get what I wanted out of you, which is the way I sadly used to operate in previous relationships. And I felt like I had arrived at the victory over lust.
It's a beautiful thing.
And there was victory. Yeah. Thanks be to God. There really was. But the mistake that I made was thinking, top of the mountain, I'm there. I've conquered this in my, oh my goodness.
Right.
The layers of our brokenness go deep, 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 deep in our being. And as your friend and mine, Father Jim, my spiritual director, says, Christopher, make peace with the journey. And here's what it's going to be. Doorway of crap. You got to work through that crap. It's going to lead you through a doorway to glory. And then there's going to be another doorway of crap. You got to work through it. And that's going to lead you to another doorway of glory. Doorway of crap, doorway of glory. Doorway of crap, doorway of glory. That's the whole journey. Like, there's always another doorway of crap to deal with. So
Eustace.
I thought I had passed through that doorway of crap, and now I was on the other side. How ignorant and unknowing I was, right? There's always more. And there's this great line in the Catechism. I forget what saint the Catechism is quoting, but the Catechism says that the journey of the interior life, the journey of purification, we make great progress, but we go from beginning to beginning, from beginning to new beginning. When we make a step forward in a journey of purification, we've started somewhere, now we're somewhere new, but now we're at a new beginning. and we have to keep going. So
I actually want to say something
please.
about his final question was about finding satisfaction in the beauty of
Yes.
God. Because I think that really it's such a beautiful question, and I think he's getting at something that can help him
Absolutely.
right now. And just something I feel like sharing with our listeners is that we, as you were describing, being on a journey, we don't know a lot about where Eustace is, but he's shared a little bit about recent developments in his life. And I do think that being on that journey with the Lord, like those very fresh experiences of God's grace transforming your heart, is a really good source of kind of a renewal of our thoughts, renewal of our mind, as St. Paul talks about.
Be transformed by the renewal of your
Yes,
minds. Romans 12.
That and Theology of the Body is so helpful here because we recognize through Theology of the Body how the beauty of a person's body reveals the beauty of that person's deep inner being,
Yes,
but it
yes.
also reveals something of God.
Yes,
that
yes.
both. And so as we are appreciating the beauty of another human being, all people, men and women, any age, can experience that deeper renewal of our minds to recognize this beauty is a sign of a real person
Yes.
worthy of love, and it's a sign of God's goodness. She or he is a sign.
Amen.
And thanking the Lord for this reminder of, say, of the goodness of the church. Just, a woman maybe specifically can remind us of the goodness of the church. Sometimes for me, if I have, an attraction to a man, I sometimes will thank the Lord for the...
Wait a minute. You have attraction to men other than me, Wendy? What?
Okay.
This is not a surprise.
No, it's okay.
That was a joke.
It's a joke. Yeah, to thank the Lord for this reminder of his goodness, that this person is a sign of Christ's goodness, and to thank him for his goodness and for
Amen.
reminding me of it. And it's very peace-giving.
Yeah.
And it removes, it's a thought that is peace-giving to our own hearts. And like you said, if it were transparent, it is
Right.
no offense
There's
to
no
the other
offense to
person.
Not only is it no offense, it builds the other up.
Yeah.
Oftentimes at Mass, if I catch myself watching the people going up to communion, instead of just thinking mindlessly about who is this person or that person or whatever, I'll try to say to myself, and this is similar to what you were saying, Wendy, if it's a guy, I'll say, you're a sign of Christ. And if it's a woman, you're a sign of the church. And I just find my heart going, Christ, church, Christ, church.
Wow.
Christ, church, church. And it's like a retraining of the muscle memory of my heart out of a place of objectification or evaluation. And we do it unconsciously, like, oh, she's cute. Oh, she's not. Oh, he looks like a jerk. We do this weird things. If we're not paying attention to our thoughts, they go not helpful places.
Right.
So to retrain the muscle memory of my heart to say Christ Church is really liberating. And I have just a couple more thoughts for Eustace here. The distinction. He's asking, what is the distinction?
Yeah.
Right here, I think, is a very clear distinction between love and lust. Authentic eros, chaste eros, which is the attraction to the true, the good, and the beautiful, right? The longing of the heart for the true, the good, and the beautiful. Authentic, chaste eros seeks to sacrifice myself for the other. Lust is exactly the opposite. I'm sacrificing the other for the sake of myself. Right? A chaste eros will say, I am willing to sacrifice whatever inclination to pleasure here I might have. I'm going to sacrifice that to uphold the goodness and dignity of the other. Whereas lust is saying, I'm willing to sacrifice the goodness and dignity of the other to please myself. So that, I think, is the clear line of distinction. And we can, when we feel, and it's not if, it's when we feel the inclination to sacrifice the goodness and dignity of the other for the sake of myself, that's concupiscence. Concupiscence is the fancy word the church uses to talk about our disordered desires. But remember those words of Jesus, so important. In the beginning, it was not so. The reason they were naked without shame in the beginning is because they didn't have disordered desires. The inclination of eros was not to sacrifice the other for the good of myself. It was to sacrifice myself for the good of the other. That's why they were naked without shame. Right? Shame comes into the picture precisely when eros becomes inverted. And now it's, I'm willing to sacrifice your good for my pleasure. And there's shame in that. We know there's something wrong with us when we do that. And that shame is the proper response when we do that. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, click like and subscribe, and please leave a comment. If you'd like to learn more about the theology of the body, click on the link TOB for free. We will send you 3 free sessions to our introductory course. You can also learn about our patron community and become part of a global community of men and women who are learning, living, and sharing this vision. And hey, check out our events calendar. We might be coming to an area near you very soon.